Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to continue with how we left off from the last video. On the last video we were looking at the dashboard from the summary results, and on this one we're going to be digging deeper into our model results of the water balance model. So to do that we would put our mouse right below where it says view results, and we see that we have two buttons here. Right now we're located on the summary subsection, and now we're going to go and click into the output catalog. Now the output catalog contains a complete listing of all of the different output variables that were generated from our model execution, and I'm going to walk you through some of the options that we have available. So to start off, it has a very similar look like our input catalog. On first glance you will see that we have this complete table where we have a select column where we can select multiple variables at the same time. We have the label for a variable, the category it belongs to, a description about the variable, and finally the original units that are used on the model, but we do have the option to change this when we look at the detailed results. Now if we go to the top, we have our different filter categories. So we can, in this case on the water balance model, we only have three categories, which is the allocation, the flows, and the storage. So we can filter out our variables by allocation. Here it is. We can look at the flows as well, and we can look at outputs that have to do with storage. And if we click on all, this will reset our table. And we also have a search bar, so if we want to look for something very specific, like to see what happened at the Waco Ball Sun, we can just look for Ball Sun, and here it is. These are the results that come out for the Waco Ball Sun. Then we have a bunch of other options here which we're going to be exploring. The first button is the recommend button. So what this does is that it will sort your listing by a recommendation according to the user role that you selected at the beginning. So in my case, I selected researcher, and if I click on recommend, the system would resort this listing according to how it thinks that will be most of interest to me. So in this case, it's showing Caballo Reservoir releases at the top, but if you selected a different role, this would probably change depending on how people use it and some of the keywords that are being used on the descriptions. Okay, so now we're going to dig in deeper into the results. So for starters, I'm just going to select one output variable. Once I select one of the variables, you'll see that these buttons that were grayed out are now available. So I'm going to first look at the view selected. I'm going to click view selected. And once I click on that, I get a detailed view about the information about that output variable. So let's go and explore this screen. At the beginning, you will see the label for our variable. You will see a brief description of what this variable is about. Some metadata like the variable name that's used in the model, what category it belongs to, and the units that we're looking at right now. Then we have the data visualization section. And as we can see, we can look at our data in three different visualizations. We can use the line plot, which is the one that we're looking at right now. We can look at things as a bar plot, or we can just directly look at the table view. And once we're in the table view, well, we have also the option to export this information to an Excel file. Okay, let's go now to my line plot. And let's continue to look at some of the options. So if we scroll down a little bit more, we'll see a section called Data Tools. And what this does is that it has a bunch of utilities that will help us interpret better the information that we're looking at. So the first one that we have here is the unit conversion. So right now we're looking at everything in acre feet, but maybe we want to change to a different unit system. We have available to change to thousands of acre feet or to millions of cubic meters. So if I click on millions of cubic meters, you can see that my chart instantly updates with the unit conversions, and you can see that now my units label is now in millions of cubic meters. And this of course affects all of the other visualizations as well. Now let's keep on moving down. The next box that we have is called Show Input Dataset. So what this allows us to do is to append one or more model input datasets into the current visualization. So by this I mean that you can bring in datasets that you were using as a parameter and paste it on top of what we have right now. So let's look at some of the input datasets available. The only datasets that this is going to show are the ones that have the same units as the ones we're using right now. So this one is in millions of cubic meters, so any parameter that also uses these kind of units will be available to append. In this case, I'm going to append the inflows at San Marcial gauges because that way I get a better idea of what was going into the reservoir, which is now our pink line, and into our main reservoir, which is Elephant Butte, and the output year by year, the yearly output from Caballo would be this orange dotted line. So this helps us get a better context of what's going on. Then let's go to the next box, which is Show Output Dataset. So what this does is very similar to the one before, but the difference is that we can append other output variables. So these are model outputs. So let's say I want to include outputs like default allocation. I want to see also the evaporation values, and I also want to look at the storage in the reservoir. So these were all outputs that were generated from the simulation. So now we have much more information in our graph, and it might help us to understand better what's going on and give it a bit more context. Okay, now let's go and move down again. So just to keep this thing simple, I'm going to reset my plot. So you'll see that below the plot at the right hand, we have two buttons here. One is reset and one is reverse plot. If we look at reverse plot first, this one just kind of switches your y-axis to be the other way around. Obviously in this data set it may not be too helpful, but it will be helpful on other examples that we're going to look later, especially when it comes to the aquifer depletion. So let's reverse this back so that this brings us up to normal, and if we click on the reset button, this will basically reset the plot and the data sets to its initial values. So it's basically going to take out the ones that we previously appended. So here it is. Here's the original plot. Now over this original plot, or even some appended ones, we have another tool that can help us understand better the trend that is happening on our line plot, and which is to apply a simple moving average. So to do that, we would click here where it says dataset, and it lets us select one of the datasets that's showing on the graph. In this case is the Caballo releases. So I select that one, and in order to apply it to the graph, we need to select how many consecutive points we want to average out. So if I drag it all the way to 6, for example, so this will be a 6-year moving average of the data set that we have of Caballo releases. So normally these type of tools help us understand better the trends in case that it's not so visually easy to interpret. Okay, so now let's look at another example. I'm going to go back to my output catalog by just clicking on the back button. And when you go to the output catalog, you might get a pop-up like this where it will ask you how relevant this output was to you. So this is just to give some feedback to the interface. But once you've already looked at that specific output, it will not ask you to rank the output again. So in this case, I'm just going to give it yes, this was relevant to me. I submit it, and there it is. It gets logged into the Swim interface. So now let's look at another example where we can compare what happened in different aquifers. So in this case, I'm going to try and compare what happened on the Hueco Bolson and on the Mesilla shallow aquifer, which is the Mesilla alluvial. So for that, I'm going to select two variables now, which is the Hueco Bolson total cumulative loss. So this would be your net recharge over the aquifer. And I'm going to select also the Mesilla alluvial. So I can click here on View Selected. And this is what we have right now. So you see that these two different aquifer systems behaved quite differently, but in order to compare them and understand them better, I'm going to append some data to each one of these. So the first thing that I'm going to do is that here is showing our total cumulative loss, and it's going up. So the more it goes up, the more loss we have on the aquifer. So this gets accumulated year by year on the Hueco Bolson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse this plot, and once I reverse it, now I get a better idea that this is actually a loss, that we are losing water on the aquifer. And right now this is in thousands of acre feet. So I'm going to add some additional output data sets, so we get a more broad view of what's happening here. And I'm going to append data sets that have to do with the Hueco Bolson. So in this case, I have what happened on the urban side, what happened on the agricultural side, and how much recharge we were having from both urban and agriculture. So once we do that, now we have a better view of what's happening. So we have the total cumulative loss, which is our net recharge. In this case, we are losing more water than we are recharging. The yellow line is the actual recharge. The blue line is how much loss we have from agriculture. And the pink line is how much loss we have from the urban sector. Now let's look at the Mesilla alluvial. So this one is a different story. We actually see that we don't have a loss. It's actually the other way around. So I'm going to reverse this plot. This one is actually recharging itself. And I'm going to also append some of the output data sets that have to do with the Mesilla alluvial. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to select this one, and I don't have anything on the urban side, which means there's no data for the urban side. We're not extracting from the urban sector here. So what we can see now is that the orange dotted line is basically our net recharge. So in this case, we are recharging the aquifer. We have the pink line, which is how much water is pumped from the agricultural sector. And we have the blue line, which is actually how much the aquifer is getting recharged overall. So this is just an example of some of the things that we can do on the interface. And the nice thing is that we can compare different output variables side by side on the same simulation. And on the next video, I will be focusing on also comparing outputs, but we're going to be comparing from different simulations, not just the ones from this very same one. So I'm going to click back here again, and you will, if you haven't looked at those outputs before, you will get asked if it was relevant to you or not. You can rank them. So I'm just going to give it a moderate review for now. Submit, and that's it. So before I finish this up and wrap it up, some of the other things that we have available, we have the deselect all button. So this one just removes our check marks.
And we also have the reset table. So if I'm on flows and I click on reset, this basically moves me back to the all. So it's going to show me everything, and it's going to also remove the check marks. And finally, we have the export output catalog. So if I click here, this will export this table to an Excel file. Okay, so I hope you can join me for the next video. Thank you.